Let's talk water levels and how they affect duck hunting. One thing that's always amazed me about ducks is their ability to know what water levels are doing from seemingly forever away. They've actually put satellite trackers on ducks and tracked them traveling over 500 miles to get to a fresh rain, a fresh weather event. That's the distance between North Arkansas and Central Iowa. How can a duck tell that it just rained 5 inches in Arkansas if he's sitting in Central Iowa? I mean, that is just crazy to think about. You know, the fresh rising waters we always get in Arkansas is usually chocolate milk. It's muddy, but somehow the ducks can fly over it and tell what kind of food's down there and where it's at, because they'll be on it within hours, which is just insane to me. And while ducks are super awesome and they're amazing creatures, to me that really points to an even more awesome creator. That's the only way to explain that to me, how a duck can have these seemingly supernatural senses. But now let's talk about how that plays into duck hunting. And we're first going to talk about rising water, because that is the most impactful in my opinion. A lot of the success we've been blessed to have over the years, rising water has been a major factor in that. Now, the reason why ducks are so attracted to fresh, slowly rising water is that it's flooding so much new food and so much new habitat for the ducks to utilize. Whether it be agricultural crops or just natural moist soil plants that have grown in river lowlands or lake coves, as the water rises and it's flooding fresh stuff, the ducks are just attracted to it like a magnet. One of the best ways you can take advantage of this is off-season scouting. Go out right before the season starts and find as many food sources as you can and start making a mental note of that. Write it down, whatever you got to do. You want the ones that are not going to be flooded by man. They're not man-made flooded. Like, they're not going to plant something and pump it. Those typically, I mean, those are good, but that's not what we're trying to do here. The best ones that I've found over the years and that have been the most effective are the ones that are more off the beaten path, the ones that take a 4, 5, 6 inch rain to really flood up into, because not a lot of people know about them, and even if they do, people don't think about it after a big rain. We have a list of places and we're watching water levels constantly. Another thing that will help you hugely when looking for these spots is trying to find spots on rivers or lakes that have water gauges posted online, because you got to watch those water gauges like a hawk. Sometimes these events can be really quick. The water will come up, the ducks will be there for a few days, and then they're gone. Another thing to keep in mind when hunting rising water, when you're hunting, a large area that's flooded, is stick to the edges. The ducks are going to be where that fresh water is going. So, if it's deep in most of the areas and it's flooding out shallower and shallower up on the edges of the water, that's where the ducks are typically going to be. Unless there's some kind of big flat or something like that. But in general, the ducks will be on the edges. Another huge thing you'll hear about, especially in the South, when talking about rising water levels, is the crest. Now, anytime you're on a river, creek, stream, whatever it is, where water floods and moves down it, the crest is the peak that it's going to get for that area. Now, the crest moves downriver as the water goes down. So it's highest here one day, then the water's going south, it's highest here the next day. As the crest goes by, the water behind it typically will start going down. The water ahead of it will start going up. So the ducks are going to be going to the fresh rising water, getting out of the stale falling water, losing habitat, gaining habitat. So a lot of this green timber hunting you hear about here in Arkansas, that's when it can be at its best, when you're on a fresh flood on a river system and it's getting up into the timber and it's freshly flooding a lot of new ground. If you're a private land hunter and you have your own place, you got control over the water, not every place sets up good for this, but especially, agricultural crops, things like that, flood up in stages. You'll be amazed at how much longer you can make your food go and how many new ducks you can keep there by just flooding up piece by piece instead of just flooding the whole thing at once. Every time you put that new water on there, you're going to get a new wave of ducks coming to that fresh food. And I've seen a lot of people use this to their advantage. That's something to think about if you got a private place where you can control the water. Now let's pivot off that and talk about falling water. Falling water can have a lot of variables to it. Like here in Arkansas, where we've got a ton of habitat, a ton of water, a ton of places for ducks to go, falling water here is almost always a death sentence. You may get an extra day or two out of a place as the water falls, but if it's getting less and less ducks, you need to get off that and go somewhere else, get ahead of it. Very few times here in Arkansas, or really here in the South, have we had continued success once water starts falling out. There's just too much other places for them to go. In places where there's less habitat and less water, like out in the Midwest, falling water is not near as big a deal there because there's just not as many options for them to go. They will eat a place until they can't eat it anymore there. So we have had fairly good success staying on falling water out west and just places, you know, where it's drier. But if you got a lot of water and a lot of options, the first sign you see of ducks slowing down, you better be getting ready to find a new place, because you're going to be goose egging pretty soon. A good example of how we've use this to our advantage is if you go back last year and check out the video Public Land Mega X. That was one of my favorite hunts from last year, but we found these ducks using this moist soil area. It was just full of barnyard grass and a fresh flood had just got up in it, and you couldn't beat the mallards out there. I'm talking thousands upon thousands. It was awesome. We actually got there a little bit late because we had never been here before and just found this place. Now we know the water levels there, and you best believe we're going to be keeping an eye on it. When the water hits where it needs to be to get in it, we're willing, we're going to be there.